Catherine the Great. Catherine II, born Sophie of Anhalt-Zerbst, May 2, 1729, November 17, 1796. Most commonly known as Catherine the Great, was the reigning Empress of Russia from 1762 to 1796. She came to power following the overthrow of her husband, Peter III. Under her long reign, inspired by the ideas of the Enlightenment, Russia experienced a renaissance of culture and sciences, which led to the founding of many new cities, universities, and theaters. Along with large-scale immigration from the rest of Europe, and the recognition of Russia as one of the great powers of Europe. In her accession to power and her rule of the empire, Catherine often relied on her noble favorites, most notably Count Gregory Orlov and Gregory Potemkin. Assisted by highly successful generals such as Alexander Suvorov and Pyotr Rumyantsev, and admirals such as Samuel Gregg and Fyodor Ushakov, she governed at a time when the Russian Empire was expanding rapidly by conquest and diplomacy. In the south, the Crimean Khanate was crushed following victories over the Bar Confederation and Ottoman Empire in the Russo-Turkish War. With the support of Great Britain, Russia colonized the territories of New Russia along the coasts of the Black and Azov Seas. In the west, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, ruled by Catherine's former lover King Stanislaw August Poniatowski, was eventually partitioned, with the Russian Empire gaining the largest share. In the east, Russians became the first Europeans to colonize Alaska, establishing Russian America. Many cities and towns were founded on Catherine's orders in the newly conquered lands, most notably Odessa, Yekaterinoslav, today known as Dnipro, Kherson, Nikolaev, and Sevastopol. An admirer of Peter the Great, Catherine continued to modernize Russia along Western European lines. However, military conscription and the economy continued to depend on serfdom, and the increasing demands of the state and of private landowners intensified the exploitation of serf labor. This was one of the chief reasons behind rebellions, including Pugachev's rebellion of Cossacks, nomads, peoples of the Volga, and peasants. The period of Catherine the Great's rule is also known as the Catherinian era. The Manifesto on Freedom of the Nobility, issued during the short reign of Peter III and confirmed by Catherine, freed Russian nobles from compulsory military or state service. Construction of many mansions of the nobility, in the classical style endorsed by the Empress, changed the face of the country. She is often included in the ranks of the enlightened despots. As a patron of the arts, she presided over the age of the Russian Enlightenment, including the establishment of the Smolny Institute of Noble Maidens, the first state-financed higher education institution for women in Europe. Catherine was crowned at the Assumption Cathedral in Moscow on September 22, 1762. Her coronation marks the creation of one of the main treasures of the Romanov dynasty, the imperial crown of Russia, designed by Swiss-French court diamond jeweler Jeremy Pazzi. Inspired by Byzantine design, the crown was constructed of two half-spheres, one gold and one silver, representing the Eastern and Western Roman empires, divided by a foliate garland and fastened with a low hoop. The crown contains 75 pearls and 4,936 Indian diamonds forming laurel and oak leaves, the symbols of power and strength, and is surmounted by a 398.62 carat ruby spinel that previously belonged to the Empress Elizabeth, and a diamond cross. The crown was produced in a record 2 months and weighed 2.3 kilograms, 5.1 pounds. From 1762, the Great Imperial Crown was the coronation crown of all Romanov emperors until the monarchy's abolition in 1917. It is one of the main treasures of the Romanov dynasty and is now on display in the Moscow Kremlin Armory Museum. During her reign, Catherine extended the borders of the Russian Empire by some 520,000 square kilometers, 200,000 square miles, absorbing New Russia, Crimea, the North Caucasus, Right Bank Ukraine, White Russia, Lithuania, and Courland at the expense, mainly, of two powers, the Ottoman Empire and the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Catherine's foreign minister, Nikita Panin, in office 1763 to 1781, exercised considerable influence from the beginning of her reign. A shrewd statesman, Panin dedicated much effort and millions of rubles to setting up a northern accord between Russia, Prussia, Poland, and Sweden, to counter the power of the Bourbon-Habsburg League. When it became apparent that his plan could not succeed, Panin fell out of favor and Catherine had him replaced with Ivan Osterman, in office 1781 to 1797. Catherine agreed to a commercial treaty with Great Britain in 1766, but stopped short of a full military alliance. Although she could see the benefits of Britain's friendship, she was wary of Britain's increased power following its complete victory in the 7 Years' War, which threatened the European balance of power. Catherine made public health a priority. She made use of the social theory ideas of German cameralism and French physiocracy, as well as Russian precedents and experiments such as foundling homes. She launched the Moscow Foundling Home and Lying-in Hospital, 1764, and Paul's Hospital, 1763. She had the government collect and publish vital statistics. In 1762 called on the army to upgrade its medical services. She established a centralized medical administration charged with initiating vigorous health policies. Catherine decided to have herself inoculated against smallpox by Thomas Dimsdale, a British doctor. While this was considered a controversial method at the time, she succeeded. Her son Pavel later was inoculated as well. Catherine then sought to have inoculations throughout her empire and stated, "My objective was, through my example, to save from death the multitude of my subjects who, not knowing the value of this technique, and frightened of it, were left in danger." By 1800, approximately 2 million inoculations, almost 6% of the population, were administered in the Russian Empire. Historians consider her efforts to be a success. Attitudes towards Catherine. The attitude of the serfs toward their autocrat had historically been a positive one. However, if the empress' policies were too extreme or too disliked, she was not considered the true empress. In these cases, it was necessary to replace this fake empress with the true empress, whoever she may be. Because the serfs had no political power, they rioted to convey their message. However, usually, if the serfs did not like the policies of the empress, they saw the nobles as corrupt and evil, preventing the people of Russia from communicating with the well-intentioned empress and misinterpreting her decrees. However, they were already suspicious of Catherine upon her accession because she had annulled an act by Peter III that essentially freed the serfs belonging to the Orthodox Church. Naturally, the serfs did not like it when Catherine tried to take away their right to petition her because they felt as though she had severed their connection to the autocrat, and their power to appeal to her. Far away from the capital, they were confused as to the circumstances of her accession to the throne. The peasants were discontented because of many other factors as well, including crop failure, and epidemics, especially a major epidemic in 1771. The nobles were imposing a stricter rule than ever, reducing the land of each serf and restricting their freedoms further beginning around 1767. Their discontent led to widespread outbreaks of violence and rioting during Pugachev's rebellion of 1774. The serfs probably followed someone who was pretending to be the true empress because of their feelings of disconnection to Catherine and her policies empowering the nobles, but this was not the first time they followed a pretender under Catherine's reign. Pugachev had made stories about himself acting as a real emperor should, helping the common people, listening to their problems, praying for them, and generally acting saintly, and this helped rally the peasants and serfs, with their very conservative values, to his cause. With all this discontent in mind, Catherine did rule for 10 years before the anger of the serfs boiled over into a rebellion as extensive as Pugachev's. The rebellion ultimately failed and in fact backfired as Catherine was pushed away from the idea of serf liberation following the violent uprising. Under Catherine's rule, despite her enlightened ideals, the serfs were generally unhappy and discontented. Personal life. Catherine, throughout her long reign, took many lovers, often elevating them to high positions for as long as they held her interest and then pensioning them off with gifts of serfs and large estates. The percentage of state money spent on the court increased from 10% in 1767 to 11% in 1781 to 14% in 1795. Catherine gave away 66,000 serfs from 1762 to 1772, 202,000 from 1773 to 1793, and 100,000 in one day, August 18, 1795. Catherine bought the support of the bureaucracy. In 1767, Catherine decreed that after 7 years in one rank, civil servants automatically would be promoted regardless of office or merit. After her affair with her lover and advisor Gregory Potemkin ended in 1776, he allegedly selected a candidate lover for her who had the physical beauty and mental faculties to hold her interest, such as Alexander Dmitriev Mamonov and Nicholas Alexander Suk. Some of these men loved her in return, and she always showed generosity towards them, even after the affair ended. One of her lovers, Pyotr Zavodovsky, received 50,000 rubles, a pension of 5,000 rubles, and 4,000 peasants in Ukraine after she dismissed him in 1777. The last of her lovers, Platon Zubov, was 40 years her junior. Her sexual independence led to many of the legends about her. Catherine kept her illegitimate son by Gregory Orlov, Alexis Bobrinsky, later elevated to Count Bobrinsky by Paul I, near Tula, away from her court. Elite acceptance of a female ruler was more of an issue in Western Europe than in Russia. The British ambassador James Harris, 1st Earl of Malmesbury, reported back to London. Her Majesty has a masculine force of mind, obstinacy in adhering to a plan, and intrepidity in the execution of it. But she wants the more manly virtues of deliberation, forbearance in prosperity and accuracy of judgment, while she possesses in a high degree the weaknesses vulgarly attributed to her sex, love of flattery, and its inseparable companion, vanity, an inattention to unpleasant but salutary advice, and a propensity to voluptuousness which leads to excesses that would debase a female character in any sphere of life. Though Catherine's life and reign included remarkable personal successes, they ended in 2 failures. Her Swedish cousin, once removed, King Gustav IV Adolf, visited her in September 1796, the Empress's intention being that her granddaughter Alexandra should become Queen of Sweden by marriage. A ball was given at the imperial court on 11th of September when the engagement was supposed to be announced. Gustav Adolf felt pressured to accept that Alexandra would not convert to Lutheranism, and though he was delighted by the young lady, he refused to appear at the ball and left for Stockholm. The frustration affected Catherine's health. She recovered well enough to begin to plan a ceremony which would establish her favorite grandson Alexander as her heir, superseding her difficult son Paul, but she died before the announcement could be made, just over 2 months after the engagement ball. On 16th of November 1796, Catherine rose early in the morning and had her usual morning coffee. Soon settling down to work on papers, she told her lady's maid, Maria Perekuzikina, that she had slept better than she had in a long time. Sometime after 9 o'clock she was found on the floor with her face purplish, her pulse weak, her breathing shallow and labored. The court physician diagnosed a stroke and despite attempts to revive her she fell into a coma. She was given the last rites and died the following evening around 9:45. An autopsy confirmed a stroke as the cause of death. Later, several rumors circulated regarding the cause and manner of her death. The most famous of these rumors is that she died after having sex with her horse. This rumor was widely circulated by satirical British and French publications at the time of her death. In his 1647 book Beschreibung der Muscowitischen und Persischen Reise, Description of the Muscovite and Persian Journey, German scholar Adam Olearius's claims about a supposed Russian tendency towards bestiality with horses was often repeated in anti-Russian literature throughout the 17th and 18th centuries to illustrate the alleged barbarous Asian nature of Russia. Given the frequency which this story was repeated together with Catherine's love of her adopted homeland and her love of horses, it is likely that these details were conflated into this rumor. Catherine had been targeted for being unmarried. Catherine's undated will, discovered in early 1792 among her papers by her secretary Alexander Vasilyevich Krapovitsky, gave specific instructions should she die: lay out my corpse dressed in white, with a golden crown on my head, and on it inscribe my Christian name. Mourning dress is to be worn for 6 months, and no longer, the shorter the better. In the end, the Empress was laid to rest with a gold crown on her head and clothed in a silver brocade dress. On 25th of November, the coffin, richly decorated in gold fabric, was placed atop an elevated platform at the Grand Gallery's Chamber of Mourning, designed and decorated by Antonio Rinaldi. According to Elisabeth Vigée-Lebrun, the Empress's body lay in state for 6 weeks in a large and magnificently decorated room in the castle, which was kept lit day and night. Catherine was stretched on a ceremonial bed surrounded by the coats of arms of all the towns in Russia. Her face was left uncovered, and her fair hand rested on the bed. All the ladies, some of whom took turn to watch by the body, would go and kiss this hand, or at least appear to. A description of the Empress's funeral is written in Madame Vigée-Lebrun's memoirs. Thanks for watching Herdery channel. Don't forget to like the video, and subscribe our channel.